Thank you, Alonso. And with that said, we have started the recording. All right. First of all, I really want to give a shout out to Nina Lewis, who several of you would have heard from. Nina was the face behind the publicity for this. So you probably got a flyer from her, an email of sorts, and so forth. So we're grateful to her for all of you that have turned up this afternoon. And we are joined by wonderful panelists. We're so looking forward to hearing from each one of them. We do want to mention at the onset that one of our panelists has had an emergency, and so unfortunately will not be able to be with us, and that is the Reverend Luella Mcgannon, so she won't be on the call with us. However, we are excited to introduce to you Richard Clay. Richard is a state board member of the National Federation of the Blind and makes his home in the state of Michigan. And we also are excited to present to you Reverend Mark Reverend, who is co-pastor with Central Presbyterian Church here in Louisville, Kentucky. And we also have Brian Edwards with us. Brian is a member of the Detroit Disability Power. So she hails from Michigan as well. And then, and also wanted to quickly mention, Brian is affiliated with one of our funded partners called Warriors on Wheels. I believe she's on staff with them. And finally, we have Laura Mcgannon. Laura is a teacher consultant and is with the Blind and Visually Impaired organization. She lives in Ludington, Michigan. So we have quite a few people from the Midwest here. But we are very excited. This is a topic that is incredibly important. And so along with all of you, we're so looking forward to learning from our panelists. And at this point, I will actually go ahead and ask Reverend Dr. Sunny Kang, who brought us the prayer earlier, but also will be serving as our MC. And you are going to hear from him now as he gives opening remarks and a brief history of the Presbyterian Committee on the Self-Development of People Ministry. Sunny?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I hope you can. Just real quickly about the history of the Sdlp is that we always heard about Black Manifesto, which was presented in 1969 in San Antonio, Texas, at the General Assembly. And while that Black Manifesto was not accepted in entirety by the General Assembly, they have formed a committee and they said, we want to report in 1970 in Chicago. So in 1970, the commission had reported back and have said that it is absolutely important that we be involved in work of self-determination of the people. And that, by the action of General Assembly, created self-development of people. And within it, they really have highlighted the fact that it is the work of the church to be involved in self-development, self-determination, so that everyone can live freely. And so that was created in 1970, and they did that by them actually giving up their lunch money. And so they went on fasting on the day that they voted, and they gave over $5,000 of their lunch money as a seed money to start Sdlp. So this began as really the work of the General Assembly commissioners saying, this is what the church ought to be focused on. And a part of their motion at the time was to say, this ought to be work of entire church to work on the root causes of poverty, as well as the root causes that keeps people of self-determination. So as they looked at that, what they decided was that it was important to create the Sdlp committee, and it was approved by the General Assembly in 1970 in Chicago. And then in 1971, the General Assembly then decided in Rochester, New York, to put it with the 1 grade hour of sharing. And in the first year, they gave 100% of the 1 grade hour of sharing money for the Sdlp. And over time, there are others that were added on. So now we get about a third of the money from the 1 grade hour sharing. But this really began as the work of justice, the work of mission of the church. And so interesting part that I just want to know is that it began with a part of reparation issue, as the Black Manifesto talked about how white denominations were really built on the work of Black labor. But Presbyterian Church tied that to the issue, not only issue of racial justice and reparations, but we tied it to church mission and to said, this is the work of the church. This is what it means to be the Christian church. And they refer back to Luke chapter 4, when Jesus stated why he came into the world, to let the prisoners go free, let the blind see, and to really talk about self-determination of the people. So that is a real quick history of Sdlp, and our work now has been increased, and I'm really happy to be part of that. So thank you, and this is a real quick history of Sdlp. Margaret, back to you.
Thank you, Sunny. That was great. Next, Alonzo, if you would please start us off with the questions that we have prepared for our panelists.
Will do. Thank you, Margaret. And for our panelists, and feel free to jump in, panelists, where you feel comfortable to answer. Could you share practices about relationship building, partnering and engagement, networking, folks taking concrete actions, power and interest in the context of addressing disability issues? And that's your first question.
Can you repeat that one more time? It was lagging on my end.
I will be more than happy to. Could you share best practice about relationship building, partnering and engagement, networking, folks taking concrete actions, power and interest in the context of addressing disability issues?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, I thought I was muted, I'm sorry. So I want to, again, thank you all for having me here very excited and honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I thank Lisa Franklin of Words on Wheels for informing me about this program. And these are some very important issues. I truly believe that when it comes to networking, coalition building, especially working around disability issues, that it is vitally important that as we come together, really be honest about our goals and our aims. I've done a lot of coalition building, a lot of networking, because we have to in the disabilities community. Oftentimes, we have groups that are built around single issue communities. And so in order to get the numbers that you need sometimes in order to generate change, you have to coalition build. So getting honesty about goals and aims, really be very clear about who they are tied to out in the community and different things, so that no surprises come up later on, and working together all the way to the end of your projects, and being careful not to let things like whatever grants be pursuing not get in the way. Having real clear communication about where everyone is going in the projects are real key to the coalitions being able to last all the way. And I think if you have a group that is not a disability group, when I'm working with the National Federation of the Blind, we're always engaging with other groups like Warriors on Wheels or Detroit Disability Power and other groups that are disability groups within our. But when I do work, I work with the Michigan African American Leadership Summit, and we were not, most of our members were not disabled. But what we did, because we were an agenda-based group, was we started a committee to deal with disability issues within the Black community. And so that is one way to do it, is to start a committee within your group or your church that is specifically tasked with addressing disability issues.
I will chime in to that, and thank you for the information that you provided. Me being an African American woman with a physical ability, there are a number of things that I would say is beneficial for everyone, not just one particular community, and that's really understanding. A lot of the times out in society, I am coming across people that don't have the understanding of what it's like to live with a disability. So if we can have more people that are open and okay with expressing the needs of persons with physical and or mental disabilities, it will actually assist those. And as you were saying, Richard, getting together with those communities in which we service and other communities where we don't really know what it's like to be able to live a self-directed, independent life without the accommodations and different things that we need as a community. I'm one of those people, I understand from both ends of the fence, not because I identify on both ends. People that don't need the accessibility or accommodations in and outside of their home. So they actually taught me how to navigate, in their world. Not to say that it's really conducive for someone like me, but being open enough to experience those things broaden not only their horizon, but it also broadens mine. And it teaches me how to be able to be of assistance to my community. So as I stated, it's all about understanding, and not just physically, but mentally and spiritually, because it all ties into one. Understanding, like I said, is the first big.
I would say amen to what the other panelists have said. And also, I found in our setting, I work mainly with a church that's located in one of the poorest zip codes in the US, 40203 in Louisville, and also Central Louisville Community Ministry that serves that area and a little broader area in downtown and what's called Old Louisville and some other areas right near downtown. A great deal of need, including 2 Presbyterian ones that so that organization is already there. And when I came here 21 years ago, and Alonzo will remember because he was on staff of this church too, and did a great job with youth in the neighborhood. But some of what we found helpful was going with who's already here and what things are already in place. The Central Louisville Community Ministry was already in place and always willing to try some new things. Our city council people have the money often. They have funding and they want to get reelected. So they will always meet with somebody, especially somebody new. Oh, good, somebody else to support me. But we have found the funding that we needed for a lot of the physical disability things came from city council. We didn't have it in our churches. We're all small and none of us is getting bigger. None of us is a mega church by any stretch of the imagination. And so a lot of invited our city council leaders to come to our churches and some of the things that we do. And they have given us a lot of ideas as well, and who to partner with and so on. And then some of it was just listening to people who are already here. Our neighborhoods all have tremendous resources of people who've just been around. There's one lady that has been in a wheelchair for the last 30 years of her life, and maybe she's 50-ish. She knows everything in the neighborhood. So just get to talk to people like her. And she and her friends readily told us what they want and what they need. So some of that is already here, and just finding out where it is. And when I was in undergraduate school years ago, I remember a Christian businessman came and talked about how churches and business should work together. And he said the OPM, he called it, other people's money. Well, some of that was kind of crass. It is true. A lot of our programs need financial assistance, and our governmental representatives for state and city often know where to get it. So they have been a tremendous help to me, as well as the other places that were mentioned.
This is Laura, and I'm sorry, but I'm here. I'd like to maybe jump on what Mark just said, as well as Richard and Breon. I am a teacher of the visually impaired, and I work with Opportunities Unlimited for the Blind. I currently am working in a district or a region that is the size of Delaware, and it's almost all rural. And I go to districts within that area and serve blind and visually impaired children in the schools. Currently, I go to the age of 26. One of the things that I have learned being up here, I have mentioned before that I've worked in big cities as well, and it's very different. I see in the rural communities, the churches get involved and are more likely to get involved with our students and their families, and have done a great deal for some of my students. And one of the first things that I realize is that they do not know how to reach out for resources. So if my student lets me know that they're very involved with their church and that there's a need there, I can go in and do some modifications or give some resources, or there are a lot of things that I can do based on what their needs are. For instance, I have a visually impaired high school student who loves to sing. So she did not have access to the music, really the scripture, those things. I ended up doing some enlargements for her and allowing her to use her technology while she was at church or in her choir practices, which helped a great deal. A couple of the other helpful, especially with parents who have severely impaired children, are church members offering respite for these families, and also offering transportation, either to and from church, or if it be medical appointments, especially for the visually impaired older people. That is crucial. And then I have met with, as Richard mentioned, having like a team in the congregation, disabilities. That is a wonderful idea, especially, of course, I'm focused on children, but I know that with the children's programs, where there are teachers and youth leaders who will maybe do extra things with the kids, of course, they need support as well. And that is another thing that I think there are a lot of agencies in every state, including the schools, that can provide help and information on that. So I think people getting to know what those are, especially for the blind and visually impaired. I mean, I'm speaking specifically to that, I suppose, but just knowing what's out there, who's out there, and who can help. And a lot, much of it is at no cost. So.
Thank you all. All right, we will now move on to our next question. And this question speaks to prevailing issues. So what are the prevailing issues we see happening within the context of poverty and those that are differently abled or those that have disabilities? What are the prevailing issues we see happening within the context of poverty and those that are differently abled or those that have disabilities? Any one of you panelists, please feel free to start us off with that question.
This is Mark. One of the things we worked on was we have our church for the last almost 20 years has had a midday prayer. And so during that time when people give prayer requests, we ask them afterward, well, what are some things, those of you that what are some of the things you're most having problems with? There are many people that are have physical disabilities and challenges who come. We did was work with a local mental health agency and who needed places where they could train workers to actually have responsibility to have a job and get out and move into the community so that they can have greater resources and benefits, and also just for their own well-being of feeling a sense of accomplishment. So our church has helped train with a social worker from 7 counties now working in the community, and we see them at the grocery store, at restaurants. Some have helped us serve our lunch for the Wednesday. We have a large Wednesday lunch that serves about 150 or more people a week, and they come and help with that. And so some of that just came out of listening to prayer requests and then getting those people together. And the 7 counties agency helped us a lot with people with mental challenges. And with physical challenges, a lot of people said, we just can't go anywhere in our neighborhood. It's an old neighborhood. It was built over 100 years ago, most of it. The sidewalk, I've fallen on the sidewalks, tripped on them because they're so uneven and fallen and hurt myself. So we got with our city council person and businesses and so on, and had our council person called meetings together, and actually he got funding together to build better sidewalks for people, especially those in wheelchairs that were having a horrible time navigating. And it got together with the Parks Department who wanted to put better trees in. And so they funded part of the sidewalk so we could put big tree wells in. So there was a different funding. The parks, I believe, and whatever part does about trees for the city, and also the council. So it really was an effort for the whole neighborhood, and it benefited not only people that need wheelchairs. Now I believe our last one was done this spring. All of our whole neighborhood, the corners, none of them have curbs anymore. They're all flat so that a wheelchair could go on it. And also it's just beneficial for all of us. There's less falling in general. Somebody has a stroller or they're pushing a hand cart or something, or a grocery cart. So a lot of that was just, it seems like common sense, but a collaboration of people for both jobs with those who are have mental challenges, and for sidewalks for those that are physically challenged. So those are some concrete things that have been done over many years here.
Thank you for that information. I would definitely have to agree to the terrible sidewalks for persons that use wheelchair walkers, canes, the stick for the visually impaired, and different things like that. That is actually still a struggle here in Michigan. Of course, Margaret said, transportation, housing, and just being able to connect with those organizations or city councils and different things like that. Being a person with a disability, it's really hard finding that stitch where you are actually able to elaborate on a more detailed portion of the things that we need in a community. A lot of my connections really came from a doctor out in Grand Rapids that disabilities, and from there I was connected to Detroit Disability Power, CDAD, CDM, which I actually sit on the board at state level with CDM, and that's Community Economic Development Association of Michigan. And being in meetings with them, I am truly learning that the community of persons that are differently able are not included in a lot of those funding. So with you giving information like, we can reach out to our churches or reach out to certain organizations that we're connected to and different things like that to be able to get funding, that's a good thing. But when we are talking about state and federal level, how do we connect with those people that are necessary to be able to live a self-directed and independent life? Like I said, a lot of the times it's about the connections, and me being a person with a physical and mental disability, I am doing my best to educate those that don't have that understanding, so that not only will things in the world or in the community will be conducive for us, but it will be conducive for other people, because your life can change in a blink of an eye. And who's to say that you will be able to walk again or be able to see again or talk again and different things like that. So there are a number of things that we need in the community as far as, like I said, transportation, housing, being able to go out in the community and feel safe and be safe with all of the messed up sidewalks and roads and different things like that. So again,
Well, I guess to me, and all of the panelists have indicated some very important prevailing issues. To me, one of the big issues here is that all across the country, it varies from some states, but scores of people with disabilities are living the best they can off of an income that is somewhere around $841 a month. And if that is not challenging enough, these individuals oftentimes have to spend some of their money on additional medicines, transportation, personal assistance to help them out during the day, and adaptive technology items that they need in order to survive, which makes that challenge even more challenging. So in inflationary times that we're living in right now, where rents across the country are skyrocketing, along with all other costs, including just the basic cost of food and goods and things you need to raise children with, when one thing goes out of whack for our communities, many things go out of whack. And so it like kind of, for people on that lowest income bracket, things can really just go out of control, spiral out of control very quickly. And being able to get connected to resources, including resources that will be able to get people better self-developed and in line with better financial and career opportunities, as well as community resources for trying to deal with their financial situations are very important.
I would definitely have to agree with you on that. As far as the financial, well, all around, I would agree with you, but the financial disturbance that we have in the community is by far one of the biggest problems, especially being a person that's on SSI or SSD. They really limit not necessarily what kind of work, but how much work we are able to do before they snatch the SSI or the SSD checks from us as a whole, but we are still able to receive that insurance. And like you said, with the economic crisis that we are in, we are not even able to afford rent and or to even purchase a home for that matter right now. So that is two of the things that I've been strictly talking about as a community. Hold on.
I think Brianne might have got disconnected.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. No, I was still connected. I just said, hold on for 1 second. I'm not sure if you guys have a program like MRS, Michigan Rehabilitation Services, and you guys, state and counties of those that are on here. But they do have career fields for persons specifically with physical and mental disabilities, as long as it's put on paper. They also have apprenticeship programs where you guys can be paid to learn different trades and different things like that. And if you are doing what I think the most you can do is probably like 23 hours working. Anything after that, they will probably take your whole check from you. But there are a number of different things that we can do, being a community of persons with physical and mental disabilities as far as employment. Now the housing thing, as I was telling Margaret, and Jesus, I forgot his name, and I just said it too. Oh Jesus. Okay, so as I was telling them, one of my focus is housing here in the state of Michigan and in the city of Detroit for persons with physical disabilities, because we lack that here so much, and just being able to provide them with the things that they need on an everyday basis right there in that same apartment building that they are living in, and also be able to grant them with employment opportunities, whether it's them learning a trade or really picking a career field, but just be able to have that stuff right there at the hands of the residents that's staying there, as well as emergency and non-emergency transportation. That's three of the biggest things that we have to come together more and advocate in here in the state of Michigan. Well, really nationwide, because I don't just focus on the state of Michigan and the city of Detroit when I'm sitting on a board at state level. I talk about nationwide. So absolutely.
To expand on that a bit, excuse me, and for what Richard and Brianne just said, speaking from the perspective of a child who essentially gets what they need while they are in the public school system in terms of special instruction and technology and individualized services like that. As they get older, they also are, when they're living with their families, are getting SSI or Social Security income. And we have all noticed that a lot of families are relying on that SSI to pay for their bills. And that money is supposed to go just to the child, but they are not able to keep functioning without that extra income. So we're seeing a lot of students graduating from school and then maybe being kind of kept back from pursuing work, because if they were to get jobs or go into higher education or skills training, there's always a chance that they might lose that SSI. And so that totally impedes their future prospects in terms of employment. So that we see that as a big problem as well.
Thank you all for lifting up those intersections of where we see poverty and ableism intersect. Is really important. And thank you for lifting that up. And as you've lifted that up, the next question I want to ask you is, what are some lessons that you have learned about how not to approach relationship building with folks in your context, either as an organization or as a church? And I preface that by saying sometimes as churches and organizations, we think we know what people need, right? Or we approach it in a way that we think is important to us, not realizing that it might be very well a way to a kind of negotiable way of doing things. So tell us, what shouldn't we be doing when we approach this issue? What kinds of things do we need to be thinking about as we approach this issue?
I would definitely say holding more meetings of some sort with persons with all types of disabilities to be able to hear our insight on what we need as a community in order for us to be conducive and get out of isolation, because society has put us in a different gap than everybody else. So when we're speaking all inclusive, like I said, everybody needs to be involved, and that includes every side of the spectrum as far as being differently able. There should not be no limitations because a person may not be able to talk the same, or a person can't hear or see or walk or whatever. We all have our own particular needs, and the only way you can be educated is to be educated by those that are experiencing it on an everyday life. And that's one of the main things that's an issue here as well. They are making all of these assumptions on what we need as a community, being people that are differently able, where they are missing so many steps and so many needs of us as a people. And it's like, you guys come to us and you say that this particular project or resource or what have you is specifically for persons with physical and mental disabilities, but you guys can't even accommodate us on the things that we need. Or if we have questions, there are so many people that don't have the patience to be able to deal with us because they lack the education and the information on like us.
True. Thank you for that. That's very helpful to think about. One thing also, Alonzo, not that I've learned not to do is do everything for people, because sometimes because I can walk and have, I have challenges, but not like some of the folks who come. And so sometimes I think, oh no, they shouldn't have to do this. I can do it. I'm a pastor. I should be saving everybody or whatever. And I think that's a problem many church people have. And it's not that I'm a bad person for wanting to help people, but actually some of the people who have need in this neighborhood might know more about something than even I do. So often they can run their own support group, or, maybe I could be help in some way, but I don't need to be running it or doing because it's demeaning to not look at people as having as many gifts as I do. So that was what I would say is not to do, not think I have to do it or I'll have all the answers.
I thank you for conversation with someone. And it was more so like they were feeling bad for me because of my limitations, opposed to allowing me to do what I'm able to do so that they could see what you're requiring I'm able to do. I just have to do it differently. And me just having to step in and stand up for my community and allowing that person to know and understand that I can do all things. I just have to do it differently. That's why I don't really say disabled. I say differently able, because we are able to do like I said, people are so closed-minded to giving us chances because they look at our limitations and not us as a people or a person. So I'm actually happy that you did bring that part up, because it allowed me to even speak up for that. Like you said, being the, oh, let me just do it type of person, opposed to, oh, let me see what you can do, or at least giving us that freedom to be able to express what our limitations are. And if we need the assistance that a lot of the times people require to give to us, although they require to do it all, allow us to come to you guys lie, and this is what I need help with, but I am able to perform any other duty in any other way that you are requiring me to, in order for not only us as a people to be successful, but for your organization and nonprofit organizations and different things like that. So I appreciate that.
I agree with that, Brianne, and I think that the church, our community, really our goal would be best served to provide ways for the disabled people to give back. I mean, like you said, we should be asking you what you would like to do, and then we would help prepare you for that. And we can't decide for them what they can and cannot do. People make assumptions about blind people and people in wheelchairs and who can't hear, and they don't know. So, giving you a voice is so important.
Some lessons that I've learned when you are approaching relationship building are just kind of, you want to go in and not try to, if you're entering into new relationships, you don't want to have a situation where one group is dominating the relationship. So you want to try to make an effort to have even relationships where as you're networking and as you're working on projects, you're getting everyone involved. Everyone is getting to have input. Everyone is being able to put into the field, take some self-ownership in the collective projects that come out of the relationship building. That tends to keep people around longer. It keeps people involved at a higher degree, and it's just kind of like one of those best practices. In terms of just relationship building, I know Mark had mentioned earlier the fact that it's important for us to use our networks to keep in contact with those city and state leaders that can help us as we're moving through. That is very important. But I want to mention that there is a flip side of that we have to watch out for too, because like here in our local area, sometimes government officials see the work that happens. We see it. We're trying to create change that affects people's daily lives. Some government officials are trying to utilize the disability community and its workers and its social advocates for photo ops and opportunities to really look good to get more votes from non-disabled people at that. And so sometimes I know within the National Federation of the Blind, we've had to look at the fact that there are committees that are floated out there. There are commissions that are created that really have no power to them. They are kind of like window dressing positions that non-disabled politicians put disabled people listen to us or act on the recommendations. And so sometimes we have to be very key about what we're going to get involved with, who we're going to lend credibility to, and who we're not going to do that with.
I would have to agree with you on that. I actually experienced a situation where they really just used me for my face and my disability to be able to get more funding. And once I picked up on it, I'm one of those, I would respectfully, of course, state my opinion, not really, my feelings, but my opinion. And a lot of the times, like I said, it's really about the educating them part. And once I see that a person lacks education, for me and being an advocate, it's my job to educate you as much as I can, even on the communities in which I don't identify in. I'm standing in the gap for all of us. So most definitely, and I'm not sure how many people are on here with children that have physical and or mental disabilities or both. But definitely allow your child to live bold in who they are, so that when they come out into society, the harsh things that they will hear or see won't really bother them mentally or spiritually, because this world is definitely cruel when it comes to us. And it's levels to it. Of course, not just the people that are in the community, but those that are higher up and feel as if they're more superior than us. They're going to hear mean, nasty, cruel things. And the building the strength and the courage and different things like that, it really starts at home. And if there are any of you on here that don't know where to start, I am here, and I will put my contact information in the chat so that you guys could have me as a resource if you want to talk to me personally, or have your child or children, teenager, adult, or what have you, child, talk to someone that can relate. Like I said, I am here because it truly takes a village, and not just to raise a child, but to be able to assist the child, and you don't have that understanding.
Thank you, everyone, for those really great responses. Unless there's anything else that you'd like to add to that question, we will move on to our next question. And likewise, as for the other questions, any one of the panelists, please feel free to jump in. Communities and or churches are sometimes reluctant to engage with disability issues or issues of those that are differently abled. How have you gone about getting people interested or mobilizing them to get them engaged in the work of addressing disability and poverty issues, and what was the result? I'll read that again. Communities and or churches are sometimes reluctant to engage with disability issues or those that are differently abled. How have you gone about getting people interested or mobilizing them to get them engaged in the work of addressing disability and poverty issues, and what was the result?
Well, Margaret, one thing that's been helpful, I think, in two congregations I've worked in, is to start with people in the congregation. And sometimes if there is somebody with a need, particularly a child, people want to help somebody in their congregation and a family, and maybe it goes out from there. If there's any reluctance or sort of fear of working with any kind of group, having somebody in the congregation in that group can always able to say, oh, we should be involved, and then maybe less fear because they already know and love this person. And like I said, particularly in one case, a child, and that was helpful. But I think starting with the congregation and not feeling as a pastor like I have to alleviate everybody's fear, but to let the congregation talk amongst themselves about where they are with it, and let people be honest and talk amongst themselves about, and they educate each other, as somebody just said, educating each to lessen the fear factor, more real for them.
I agree with that, Mark. I've had students in parishes and congregations where they just become the star of the show after a while. And it's because of the determination of the parents to make them visible. And a lot of times, you know, it takes a while, like with anything, to get to know someone. Visually impaired blind are the lowest incidence population of people with disabilities. So you're likely to see them less frequently than others. And so just by having them on the premises, people learn so much. And when they can be done, I mentioned before, like respite care is a really important thing for families. And I mean, just if there's a visually impaired child in the church, maybe somebody could offer to sit with that child during Mass or the service in order to free up the parent for a little bit. It's a real struggle to be a parent of a person with a disability. Go on and on and on about that, but there are so many good people willing to help, but they just need to know what to do. So I think giving the family and the person a voice is really important.
I would definitely have to agree with you on that, Laura. Yes, the families, I would definitely say, need help and also need breaks, because it's mentally challenging for them to have to learn how to assist their child, especially if their child is bad. And a lot of the times, of course, those parents don't know how much of a mental challenge it is for us to even, stay in a household or be in in society where you're not really seeing too many people like yourself, or, too many caring people that's going to ask you, if I can help you with it. Just sit down and have those one-on-one talks with us, because it's not always about making the parent or anybody else really, I'm not going to say understand, but we don't really try to put you guys in a situation where we're making you feel like, oh, you want us to live in your world, and that's just simply something that we can't do. No, it's really about understanding what it's like to deal with the mental and emotional and spiritual challenges that we deal with being a person with a physical and mental or both disability. Like I said, it's really the education piece, as well as having that listening ear, so we don't feel like we have to hold on to a lot of those feelings that we feel. And a lot of the times, to us, our feelings are facts, but when we sit down and we're able to converse with people that can help us understand that living on your side of the fence is challenging, just as challenging as it is living on our side of the fence, to give us a different perspective to look at. But like I said, allow us that time to be vulnerable and, express our needs and our wants and different things like that.
So many of, as the panelists have just been saying, this is really it is all about educating the greater community, and in some instances, the greater church family, that the disabled community, the disabled members of the church family, are just as they are, with maybe one difference, and that they are not as different from them as they believe they are, due to the society that we live in and the miseducation that non-disabled people receive about people with disabilities. And so, education campaign that needs to go on within the church. It is the fact that, yes, they need to, the church needs to make sure that people with disabilities are participating in the programs, in the activities. They are some of the singers, dancers, mimers, deacons, whatever, they're within the church, so that people are seeing them on a regular basis, or that partnerships are formed so that they are brought in to be regular and meaningful participants in programs and activities. And these community education campaigns have to go so far. Here in Detroit, many of the top disability groups participated in a coalition to continue the work that Lisa Franklin of Warriors on Wheels had been doing going years back. She had been trying to get an amendment to Detroit City Charter that would really uplift people with disabilities and create something like a office for people with disabilities in the city's charter. Over the last 2 years, a lot of the groups, disability groups, including the National Federation of the Blind and many others, came together, and we all worked together. We built these relationships, and we went on a community education campaign to convince our leaders and the people of Detroit that this was worth to be done, even to the fact that what we did was we leaned on educating people to the fact that there's far more than just the people with physical disabilities that you can see, or the people who might have the cognitive disabilities that you can tell from, immediately talking to them or hearing someone speak, but that so many of the people who consider themselves non-disabled are in fact disabled. And we did a lot of education around that. We got a lot of people to support us. There was a vote on the charter, our amendment. We were able to influence the leaders to put our amendment into the revised charter that was voted on for 2021, and people really supported it. Unfortunately, there was the opposite side who were really against the charter, driven by some city leaders. They outspent our side something like 10-1. They defeated the new revised charter. It did not get put in the charter, but our work was so prominent, and it was so big, from writing newspaper articles, going on talk shows, on the radio and TV, and calling talk show hosts, and having marches, and showing up and meeting with community leaders and politicians, to the fact where the mayor and the city council did all support our work to some degree, and they agreed to create a kind of small pilot office of disability affairs within the city of Detroit that would have all of the groups not participated in that work.
That's very interesting, Richard. It makes me think about the Americans with Disabilities Act and how that can be expanded to include what you're talking about. If you know what I mean. The ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, has been very helpful in terms of structures and accessibility for all different kinds of people. But it really doesn't mandate anything in terms of educating people. And I think that it could probably do that in a much better way, like in the way you just described.
I agree.
I would definitely have to agree. And that's why one of the key things that I spoke on when I first spoke was the education part. Because if you lack the education, you're going to lack the understanding. And it's unfortunate that we stay in that we're living in a society, like I said, where they have us so, we are so gapped. And it's almost like we don't hold any weight, like Richard said. They agreed to all of the things that were said to a certain extent, but the big part of it was just like they're still missing the niche, and I'm not 100% sure as to what was done wrong. But I also feel like, as I stated before, when there are community meetings with state and federal officials and different things like that, I definitely feel like we as a community should be involved in all of that, so that all of our voices can be heard. One or two people. I've always been the type to believe in where 2 and 3 or more are gathered, God is always in the midst. So, like I said, they need to hear from multiple perspectives. As for me, as you were stating, Richard, it's really about who you talk to, and if the person is really in a space where they want to be educated on our needs and our wants. Because I've spoken to quite a few people over at MSHA in regards to housing and a housing project. And, she told me, she was like, well, your project isn't big enough. And what about the other needs of the community in which you identified? And for me, it was just like, if I could start small, it's not like the housing population for us can't grow, but they are really looking for something big. And even with something big, if it don't make sense to the bigger crowd, they don't want to go with it. Of necessities that I feel like we need as a community to be right there at the forefront, and where we are laying our head on an everyday basis. So, like I said, it's really just everybody coming together and being okay with being educated. But I definitely feel like there should be some type of education classes where those individuals that are interested will be able to receive some kind of certificate to be able to assist us with physical and mental disabilities on getting the word out nationwide on
Thank you for that. Absolutely powerful. I think you are taking us to church, as the expression goes. We're going to church. And I want to segue off of what Breon just mentioned to talk about basically what are some things, because I'm hearing advocacy in here, right? Education, these important aspects of information share some things that you all think would be helpful to our folks here on this call around relationship building and doing anti-poverty work. And from your experience in your context, what do you think would be helpful? Share some things. Are there details about churches and ministries need to know? Are there particular things like what if we want to do this but we don't know where to start, right? Or we're already engaged. So what could be helpful to our listeners today? What would you want to send them home with to do?
Okay, so that's a great question, because oftentimes we may have some churches who have church leaders who are people with disabilities themselves. And so they already have a pretty good idea about some of these issues. And oftentimes we have church leaders who are not disabled, and due to no fault of their own, they just don't know. So programs like today's are just vitally important to us moving forward and achieving some progress on these issues with the church playing a leadership role. And I think this program is something that should be it should be forwarded to other churches. It should be perhaps replayed at the church, at the different church denominations and church buildings and stuff at a particular time, in order to educate the church leadership and the church membership about these issues, all of these resources, and all of these advocacy possibilities that are being discussed, so that it just doesn't stay with however many people are here. It needs to. Anti-poverty work is, to me, all about solution-oriented thinking. It's about helping people to gather the maximum amount of resources and supporters that they can get in order to help them solve their personal and their group problems. In the National Federation of the Blind, we try very hard to assist with attaining what we call blindness skills. The skills of blindness that you need in order to do the same things that sighted people do on a daily basis, but just to do them in a different way using new skills. We assist them with acquiring the tools of blindness, the understanding that blindness is not the thing that prevents them from living the life that they want to live. It is really about becoming a new, more self-developed person who has the motivation and the skills to do whatever it is that they want to do. And so within the church context, I just think it is important for people to take that same approach, get the information and begin to attack these where you are helping the disabled people that you come in contact with, helping them to go forward and really be able to address their personal problems, their group problems, and get the skills and the tools that they need. I also think that the church leadership has to understand, and this may be a difficulty, that in some areas it's not, they're going to have to be willing to go into some areas of uncomfortability. Because along with education and along with advocacy, what is also needed is there's got to be some challenging of the power structure. Reverend Kang started early how the self-development of people campaign came out of the Black Manifesto, which is which was related to the Black Power movement of the 1960s. And that this was a demand for power that led to the need to create more the self recognition and nationwide spread, international spread for the self-development of people. And I was glad to hear that, because in the NFB, we're dedicated to the self-development of blind people. In the Michigan African American Leadership Summit, we're dedicated to the self-determination of Black youth and of Black people. And so when Laura mentioned a little while ago the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA law and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, these are the two major pieces of legislation institutionalized change that gives the protections for people with disabilities of our rights and everything that allow us to be able to do what we do today without further and great harassment. But what is really holding us back from achieving the heights that we should be achieving as people with disabilities is the fact that the current laws that are on the books are very loosely enforced. We don't always need new laws. We need the government to enforce the laws that are already on the books and to force to go by these laws and not just gloss them over. And so part of the advocacy of the church, once the church leaders become educated in this work and form partners within the disabilities community, is that they need to join us, because the church leaders have excellent political connections, to join us in doing some of the uncomfortable work of applying pressure, pressuring the local, the state, the federal political leaders to enforce the law and make those who are in the power positions respect the laws as they pertain to people with disabilities and our rights to access, rights to affordable housing, rights to adaptive computer technology in order to go to work and get job training, and our rights not to be discriminated against in any of the facets of life.
Totally agree with that, Richard. And it seems like from my perspective, once a child graduates from school, public education, and they're on that transition road, there are certain agencies, Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, every state has one. They may go by a different name, but they're there to help train them to go on to an independent future. But we can't rely on the services that they provide from year to year in terms of financing. It changes so much. How much money they're willing to give for the things that you just mentioned, like technology, which is so expensive.
Right.
You know, a middle-class person couldn't afford half of the things that, you know, are needed, let alone someone who's in poverty already. And also that transition time is like I said, so important, but I can see the church really kind of filling in that void for these people, or our disabled community, especially if they don't go on to something, you know, more skills training or like that. There are things that can be found to give them some purpose. And our government agencies don't seem to get that, like you've explained. But I do believe the church does. I mean, I see it a lot, and I see a lot of help coming from.
I would have to agree with the both of you. I have been graced to attend a church that is all about community advocacy and different things like that. So even with you guys giving your input, it just gave me another perspective as far as how, you know, I need to and how I can reach out to, you know, my bishop and first lady and talk about some of the challenges in the community for persons with physical and mental disability. And he stretched beyond, you know, the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan. He's actually connected to people over in South Africa. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's not connected to some of you guys over in the states that you guys reside in. A leader and an advocate for my community. I will definitely be doing a lot of the same things as well to get the word out there and be able to be engaged in those meetings where there is. So for me, I would just say this, for me, I feel like there needs to be comprehensive workshops, not necessarily for persons with physical and mental disabilities, but those that lack the education, the understanding. I definitely feel like it needs to be a lot more of that going on. And people really need to learn the definition of all inclusive and what ableism really is and what it looks like. Because as some of you have already stated since we've been on this call, there are, and I believe it was you, Richard, there are people that have disabilities that you can't see. And because they weren't taught to live bold in that, they figure, oh, I'm normal or regular, as society will call it, like everybody else. And it's like, you also have limitations. And if I'm being honest, I actually spoke out speaker at a conference some months back. I believe it was in April. And I had to open up their eyes to a lot of things. Like, all of us have some type of disability. So why make one or our disabilities greater than those other people that are silently having, you know, disadvantages and different things like that. We all have to, people, of course, that don't even know that they have, you know, disabilities or are differently able outside of the people that they associate with on a daily basis. And it's not that they didn't want to know. It was the fact that their family didn't even understand that they were in the same category as one of us. So having classes and different things like that, I feel like is a huge necessity in order to be able to bring our churches closer to us and them having that understanding so that they can be able to go out and educate others in society, where it's not just us, but we also have people that look normal as a representation for us. We need people to stand on the side to fill those big gaps that they do have between us. Because I promise you, I can get a community of people that I know that are in wheelchairs, and we all can put our wheels together, but there's still them small gaps that need to be filled with those people, like I said, that society consider as normal.
Wow, thank you all. I could go on just listening to all of you. I have learned so much from this conversation. I don't want to cut any of the panelists off. Does anyone want to say maybe one more thing? If not, that's fine. No pressure. Just wanted to make sure that we hear. If there's anything else that you have to say, we hear from you. Okay. If not, I am, before we move into Q&A, I would like to ask our audience to give a hand of applause to our panelists, whether you want to use the icon or to do what you see some of us doing. They have just been So thank you so much to each of our panelists. I trust that everyone else that's been part of, that is part of this webinar has learned as much as I have. So I do see a question in the chat. We don't have too much time. I'll read that one and then pass it on to Alonzo. So this question says, how many Sdlp grants are given each year are specific to people/groups with disabilities? Thanks for all of your insights and wisdom. Truly, thanks to all of you for your insights and wisdom, panelists. So with regards to specific numbers, I do not have a number. I do know that over the past number of years, Sdlp has given grants to groups that are differently abled or have disabilities in different ways. So certainly some of the panelists that we've heard from today, for instance, Breon is on staff with Warriors on Wheels. That's a project that Sdlp awarded a grant to, has awarded a grant to in the past, and they, as you've heard, they do fantastic work in areas of advocating for what some of their needs are and educating us, like Breon and the other panelists have done today. And also Opportunities Unlimited for the Blind. That is actually another group that Self-Development of People, and thereby Presbyterian Church USA has partnered with by awarding it a grant. And Laura, who's been one of our panelists, is actually on the board for that organization. That one too is in Michigan. And then I know we have partnered in the past with groups also, at least one that comes to mind, consisting of people that are deaf or hard of hearing. And then also those that were experiencing mental health issues. So, you know, we continue to do this work because those of you that have been part of this conversation, whether you're part of the Presbyterian congregation or mid-council or Sdlp committee, you all make this work possible through supporting the One Great Hour of Sharing. And so again, we want to give a shout out to our panelists, and I will pass it on to you, Alonzo, to move us forward.
Thank you very much. I think there's another question. I think Charmaine has asked a question. Does Sdlp work with people who are differently able in African countries? That's a really good question. Of course, as you all well know, we have an international component of what we do. Particularly, I think, international person was on the phone, but we have, I mean, when we have worked in our West African initiative some years ago, some of the issues that community members were facing were definitely issues of ableism. And so, you know, again, just as our panelists mentioned, disabilities that you can see and disabilities that you cannot see. So we have done training, courses, several things that have been very helpful to our folks there. And the West African Initiative took place in several places. It was in Sierra Leone, of course, right after the Civil War, and then also in Liberia. And so what we were able to do is really visit villages and have these conversations. So I would say yes, and we have before. And so we don't, I can give you that information about East Africa, but I want you to connect with Teresa Bedard, our international person. And then she can give you a little more information about how that works and the partnerships that we do with our incredible sibling ministries, which is good segue into the One Great Hour Sharing. Of course, on this call are several members of the incredible Hunger Program, who is one of our sibling ministries, and members of Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. And so we are the recipients of the One Great Hour Sharing offering. And so I lift that up to let you know that, you know, this work is made possible by you all in the pew. Those of you who give, this is the way we're able to do this work. I think Sdlp Sunday next year will be March 12th of 2023. This is a day that we will lift up the gifts of in church to our ministries here at Sdlp. But I do want to remind you that This is incredible work. We have been schooled and blessed today. And again, as you continue to think about one great hour sharing, think about these are the kinds of things that happen because of your giving and because of the fact that you care. And we are able to make this possible. Forums like The Struggle is Real, because the reality is as we all know on this call, the struggle is real. And so, but we thank you for being on this call and being with us. And if you have any other questions too, you can always email us. You know, I know that folks have been, our panelists have been very, very kind in stating that they could be connected. You can be connected to them if necessary. Any more questions about what we do, please ask us. We have incredible folks in the room. You know, the incredible Sunny Kang, who has been a part of Sdlp for many years. One of our panelists, Mark Barradin, is also our local Sdlp person here in Louisville, Kentucky. So you've got a lot of folks, I see a lot of faces here. Curtis Kearns, Faye Fedlum, a lot of folks that are here. I'm welcoming you all to be here. The incredible Jim McGill is here. Also, Shelley Latham, it's good to see you. Good to have you here. And so we're hoping that this will be a resource for you all. And I'm going to hand this over to Margaret for some wrap up. I know we're about a few minutes over our time, but we thank you for being patient. And we also thank you for being part of this. This is exciting.
Yes, thank you, Alonzo. So in wrapping up, I would leave us with the charge. I think that I have been able to gather from what we have been learning today. One is education. Let us continue to educate ourselves about issues such as the ones we have learned about today, and let us also educate others within our congregations, our mid-councils, and others that we are in contact with. And then I think the other takeaway also that I heard is the importance of centering the voices of those that are differently abled or have disabilities. Being able to offer platforms like the one that we did today, where we actually hear from them as the experts on the issues that they have discussed with us and taught us about. And so those are at least a couple of takeaways that I would like to encourage each of us to ensure that we put into practice. And as far as resources, if you would like to find out more about the work of Sdlp in this area, I will put shortly the Sdlp website address, or anyone else from Sdlp, feel free to do that, please, in the chat. We do have on our website, you may have to scroll through a number of our reports because we list all the different types of projects for the past several years that Sdlp has been fortunate enough to partner with communities around the country and outside the US. But some of those you will be able to find projects where we've partnered with groups consisting of people that are differently abled or have disabilities. So on that note, again, thank you to our panelists. And I, again, have learned so much, and we so appreciate that you were able to spend time with us. And thank you to our audience. We cannot do this ministry without you. You are our partners in ministry, and we look forward to continuing that partnership. And at this time, I will hand it over to the Reverend Dr. Sunny Kang. I neglected to mention earlier that he's a senior pastor at United University Church in Los Angeles, California. And he actually also co-chairs, as was mentioned, that he is on the Presbyterian Sdlp Committee, but he actually co-chairs that committee. That is Pacific Presbyterian Sdlp Committee. And so at this time, I would ask Sunny to close us off with prayer.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Alonzo, for the invitation for me to be with you today. Let us pray. God, your grace and your mercy is beyond our comprehension. You love us more than we could ever imagine. And you have placed your glory in each of us, and just as we are. And you have enabled us, just as we are, to experience your fullness and your grace. Gifted each of us to your pleasure, so that each of us can bring gifts that of our own experiences to others. We ask, oh God, that may we indeed be better Christians, as we have heard from those who are experiencing your grace in a different way, and how their experiences have enlightened ours, and how their abilities have shown how we are disabled, how their senses in different areas have awakened our sensibilities of how your heart is. So as we have learned from them, we are grateful. We are grateful their vulnerability, their willingness to share, and their willingness to educate us. And we know that we are better Christians because of them. So may we continue to work and walk in partnership with them as you have walked with us, O Jesus. May we appreciate them just as much as Jesus has appreciated all those in the stories of the gospel. And may we indeed be your people, because we come for a common cause of being ambassadors of your grace and of your love, and being the people of hope in our world. May we indeed be people of Christ. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Sunny. Thank you for joining us and for being a part of this today. Thank you all.
Yes, go in peace.
Thank you.
Alonzo and Nina, are you able to hang around for a bit?
Thank you.
For about a second, I've got a truck over to make copies of some kind of important document.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so I've got a few minutes.
Okay. Hi. Okay.
Hi.
Right.
All
Yeah.
right.
Fantastic.
What was that, Nina?
No, my probably computer is like a stop and working. I told you that issue.
Mm.
Trying to stop the recording.